Alright, White Forest Dogmatika, Match 1, Game 1, up against Heroes here. Let's go. So our only starter is the Piri Res map. That's not a big deal because it gets us to Astalar anyways, but unfortunately it does get us immediately drolled. But our hand is weirdly resilient to droll because we can go Toy Box, set 2 from the deck, which doesn't care about droll, and then Astalar summons from deck, which doesn't care about droll, so we can at least get Shenying and a couple of traps and battle protection and follow up for next turn online through the droll, which is a nice thing because White Forest often just folds to droll, but that hand in particular was pretty good. In fact, we even opened reframing so we could protect our Shenying, our one boss monster we managed to put out from the Forbidden Droplet. We can use Shenying as a 2-for-1 because Heroes does like their graveyard, but unfortunately they had a really good hand as well, so all we have is this Morian and battle protection from the Toy Box engine at this point. So, you know, we're like, Heroes needs battle as well, so the Toy Box is pretty good. This is where I was supposed to Morian my own Shenying. I'm not familiar enough with Evil Hero and Neos Lord to recognize that on summon, you have to target a face-up monster to take control of. So if I had Morianed my own Shenying ahead of time, he couldn't steal it, and then this game probably goes a lot easier. As it is, I tried the book because I wasn't sure about that ruling. He does unfortunately still take it because it's been targeted. We use the Toy Box and Neos Lord even though it can't actually be destroyed. Again, I'm just not super familiar. I should have taken the hit from Lord and waited for Sunrise to use the Toy Box. But the nice thing is that summoning Toy Soldier back gets us Sylvie anyways, which is just protection from next turn. The bad thing is we are staring down like 2 to 3 disruptions. We know this is favorite contact, which allows them to fusion summon on our turn. But we do have a starter. They don't have another Droll. We rip the Ultimate Slayer so we can put our Shenying back, so that's 2 less cards to worry about. So it's really just the favorite contact we have to deal with. And we've got, you know, a full hand and graveyard follow-up and things like that. So we go Chaos Angel to force out the favorite contact. They're playing Plasma, which is pretty spicy. That doesn't get banished, right? You know, it gets shuffled back in. And they go into DPE. So DPE is the one thing they have, and they try to pop Chaos Angel, which does not work, because we go to battle to force out the DPE before we continue anything, thinking we're probably not going to kill them this turn through a DPE either way. So that gets forced out. They're on 0 cards in hand. They don't have a whole ton in the graveyard, and we can do a pretty significant combo where all of our stuff is now protected multiple ways. I summon the Ecclesia and I just grab a Fleur-de-Lis because I am, like, we don't have the board space to do the full Maximus combo, and with our life as low as it is, we're only at 1100, I'm not comfortable filling up my zones and requiring them to beat over me before I start to interact. I want to interact immediately, and I figure Morian is a Book of Moon, Fleur-de-Lis is a negate, and then Diabel is a Book of Eclipse. That's probably enough interaction to play through a 1-card hand, and I was correct. They just end up waiting out the time, thinking, never figure out what they're going to do, and then they scoop. So let's go to Game 2. Game 2 against Heroes, we're on the draw this time, obviously, because we won the last game, so they got to choose, and they would like to go first. Our hand sucks, but we do have multiple board breakers. So the plan here is to either rip a starter, which would be the optimal play, or to break their board, simplify the board state, and hope that the traps can get us through a couple of turns as we get to a starter. It's a long shot, but, you know, that's what we've got. Unfortunate that we only have 12 starters in the deck in general. Like, we just can't play more. I wouldn't hate even just having an Ecclesia here, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers. So they do a full combo. The nice thing about Heroes, especially in Genesys, is that they do not end with a crazy amount of disruptions. They're more a battle phase deck. So us ripping Dogmatic Punishment kind of sucks, but isn't the worst thing in the world. They negate Dark Hole with their only negate. We send Garura for Ultimate Slayer, hoping to draw a starter. We don't. We just draw Woes of the White Forest. that sucks. So we normal summon the Toy Soldier, which allows us to grab Toy Box, which can act as additional disruption. I probably shouldn't have put the Toy Soldier back, but it's not a big deal. We set a couple of cards, and they disastrously go into Shining Neos Wingman, which allows them to pop all of our Toy Box stuff, which was kind of weird because they knew what the Toy Box cards were if they were paying attention, because that allows us to summon back both Toy Boxes as bodies. And then we still have 2 traps set. Woes of the White Forest can act as a starter as long as we get there. We have Dogmatika Punishment. I rip it when they go to Fusion Summon to blow up Backfire in the hope that it forces them to use Shining Neos Wingman as fusion material, and in fact it does work. They are forced to use Shining Neos Wingman, which means we can't just, like, die, basically, because that was their highest attack monster. Unfortunately, DP takes out Woes of the White Forest, and with it go our hopes of a starter assured from the deck. They go Miracle Fusion, which is about as bad as it can get, into Wake Up Your Elemental Hero, which is just a big guy that can attack as many times as the monsters we have. They don't attack twice for no particular reason. They just attack the once, so well, but we rip Toy Box, which is kind of interesting. So we Tribute Tank to get Soldier back from Grave, which, because we already have Toy Box, can allow us to just go get any level 4 light, which lets us get Sylvie, and we haven't normal summoned, so we have found a starter, and then we also have Toy Box to put the Toy Tank down. Unfortunately, they have at least 1 disruption, but we have to go for it. So we normal summon Sylvie, get the Tails, and they really should have popped the Sylvie because we couldn't have activated Tails if they had. Whatever, it's fine. Unfortunately, you may be like, wait, what the hell just happened there? Remember, we were still under Dogmatika Punishment lock for 1 turn, so while we have achieved a starter, we could not immediately use it. So we just had to set the Quad Dogmatika Beast, which we really didn't want to have to use because that resets the lock for another turn. Woes of the White Forest allows us to Synchro Summon on their turn, so we don't have to do a full big combo here to gain disruptions, thankfully. That's one of the cool synergies about this deck. We reset our toys so that we have battle protection, and we have LZ for follow-up. So we just have to ride out this 1 turn without dying, and we have a Book of Eclipse, so hopefully we can do it. We go for Sylvie here. They pop our back row with Stratos. We immediately trigger all the toy stuff again. They really need to quit doing that because it's just giving us infinite advantage. They go to Droplet the Sylvie by discarding the last card in hand. We use our Droplet the Silvera. We use our Sylvie in the graveyard to bounce it back to the extra deck so that the effect resolves regardless. We get back our toys searches, they get Book of Eclipse, just one big old chain that ends in a pretty good place for us, because the Wake Up Your Elemental Hero got reset by being flipped down and face up again, so it doesn't remember how many materials it was fusion summoned with, so they can just attack one thing, and we've got a ton of follow-up available now into their 1 DPE and no cards in hand. I mean, and to be fair, DP is scary, but they didn't rip it immediately, and even if they did, it wouldn't have mattered too much here. So we go into Diabel so that if they use the DP, we can, again, use Silvera on them so that we can pop all of their stuff. They don't DPE for, like, way too long, which lets us go into Chaos Angel, so Chaos Angel forces out the DPE, but because they activate a card effect, that allows Diabel to summon out Silvera, which can book their board. They pop their own Wake Up so that it doesn't get booked, and they can summon something else out. Unfortunately, I think they thought that Shining Spirit of Neos is just indestructible in battle regardless, but it's not. You have to summon it from hand for that effect to be active. So we just have lethal on board, we go to battle and force the issue, we swing for 4,200 double piercing with Silvera, we swing for 2,000 double piercing with Diabel, and then we can finish him off with Chaos Angel. Very, very iffy touch-and-go fight there, but thankfully just the high density of traps in our deck allows us to survive long enough to accrue enough value to take control of the game away from the opponent. So that was a pretty fun one. Cool, cool. Alright, match 2, game 1, we are up against Red Dragon Archfiend, and we lost the die roll, so we are going second. Thankfully, we've got a really good going second hand, just a really good hand in general. We've got Dark Hole to clear up the board, Effect Veiler to try and stop a play on their turn. We've got a starter, an extender, toy box, which is extension and fuel and just does everything in the world for us. There are few hands I could have drawn up that would be better than this one. So, unfortunately, Effect Veiler doesn't really do a whole lot against them. I am worried about them getting to Red Supernova. They don't manage to, it's just such a hard card to get to, but they make two big guys and they have a bunch of trap sets. So we go Dark Hole first thing because we didn't see a negate at all, but they apparently just ripped Starlight Road, which is insane that they're playing that to me, but it works out here. Which then they pop our toy box, so that stops the toy box value, and we are just on the do White Forest things plan. They go Red Rain before we can make Silvera, but thankfully we're not quite done yet. We still have gas. Thankfully we drew into a Woes of the White Forest, so we actually have gas, otherwise this was going to get dicey real quick. But at this point they are out of interaction, but we aren't going to be able to go much further. We just do not have the resources left after breaking through their defenses. So we go into Lulu Lilith, summon Ecclesia. Ecclesia adds Maximus, but unfortunately we had to put back our Sylvie. No, not Sylvie, Riciella. We had to put back our Riciella to get to this point, so we don't actually have anything engraved to banish for the Maximus, which means we're stuck at this point, which, to be fair, isn't that bad. That's like a Book of Eclipse, a negate, a bunch of stuff. They go to Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend to pop the board. We respond with Veiler to negate it, and they respond with Red Zone to pop their own Red Dragon Archfiend. They must not be super familiar with this deck because Scarlet Red Dragon says it destroys as many special summon monsters on the field as possible with attack less than or equal to this card's. They're trying to dodge the Veiler, but when this card hits the grave, it no longer has attack, so the effect does not function either way. Effectively, I have negated the effect by forcing that out of them. They summon it back, and we go Morian, so that they can't use its effect, which forces them to use the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend effect. This one is worse for them. It does wipe our board, but it stops them from attacking with anything besides itself for the rest of the turn. So we're safe. We're not going to die, but we're not looking great. Thankfully, we do have a Sylvie in the graveyard, which helps for follow-up. We've got Astalar. We have gas for Maximus to negate, or to banish to summon itself now. So, like, we're not looking great, but they don't set up that many disruptions. They've got the Red Rain, they've got Red Zone. We're gonna do what we can. So, on end phase, because Lulu Lilith was sent to the graveyard, we can summon out Ecclesia and immediately go get Fleur-de-Lis the Thunderbolt, which is gonna help us break their board a lot. And the lock will go away before our turn starts, which is really cool because we rip Astalar. Unfortunately, we just don't have anything to send off of Astalar, but we go Fleur-de-Lis, set a trap, and then we can normal summon Astalar, go into Chaos Angel to get rid of Red Zone, which they respond to by trying to pop the Dogmatika punishment. So we just use the punishment. Unfortunately, it doesn't do a whole lot for us, but we can go Maximus, banish, rip cards from their deck, send cards from our deck, get value, we draw a card, we search stuff on end phase, we can set the Toy Soldier in case they're dumb enough to pop it, search Fleur-de-Lis, and it's still not looking great, but the thing about the Red Dragon Archfiend deck is a Red Rain is a lot of their disruptions, and it is based on the level on field, so it banishes everything below the highest level. And we have Chaos Angel at level 10, and they can't really get over that because their monster effects are normally what would get over that, but Chaos Angel is immune to monster effects, so they have to go into a monster just to trade with the Chaos Angel, and that leaves them with not enough damage on board to actually get over Maximus, which is also a level 8. So they can't do anything to get Maximus off the field. So while it looks like we're sputtering, they're in this weird place where they just don't have an out to a 3000 attack, level 8 body in defense. Very funny, but it means that the game's gonna go a couple of extra turns, and we're gonna be able to control our way back into the game. Though, to be fair, it's been a really good one either way. Yeah, they get Red Rain back, and they can play the Red Rain, but the only thing they're getting rid of with it is Ecclesia, because our level 8s are still defended. So, you know, they're doing stuff, we're clawing our way back in. We have Woes so that we can summon Sylvie and then go into another level 8, which means that Red Rain does literal nothing now, because our entire board is the same level as theirs. We can use Fleur-de-Lis the Knighted to gain 3,000 attack so that it can crash over one of their Resonators and meet their dragons. And at this point, it's not a commanding lead, but I think we have turned the corner, because we have interaction. We can summon Silvera to book their board, so they just can't do that much. They can flip back up a couple of guys and get rid of our toys, but, you know, we have value coming out the wazoo. They have to crash with Fleur-de-Lis because she's going to be the biggest thing on board next turn. If they don't, they still cannot get over Maximus. We rip the Ultimate Slayer to clear their board, and that should be all she wrote, because we can go Quad Dogmatika Beast to bring back the Despian Lulu with Lilith, and then crash for game. Woo! So that sure was a game, huh? Let's go see the last one. Alright, and last game is we are going second again, up against Red Dragon Archfiend again, because we won the first game, so they chose to go first again. And I have never played Red Dragon Archfiend, but I'm pretty sure they flubbed somewhere, because they have to just pass on nothing, but I'm pretty sure Bone Archfiend just does combo for them, so like somewhere along the line they messed up, which is bad for them, because while we didn't have the single best hand the deck can produce like we did last game, it's still a pretty good hand. Like, this does everything just fine. So them flubbing their combo and not being able to establish any real defenses kind of sucks for them, especially considering how good game 1 was. It was 7 minutes of recording for you guys, but it was probably a good like 30 to 40 minutes of actual in-game time. But unfortunately, Silvera gives our stuff double piercing. We can swing in, and it looks like they're going to be left at 400, but they're not, because we can bounce the Silvera herself to summon Sylvie during the battle phase to do the last 400 points. A little bit anticlimactic here, just considering how good the rest of the games were, but, you know, not everything can be a banger, I guess, and sometimes the pressure of going to game 2 after a 30-minute game 1 just, like, makes you flub your combo. Who knows? We've all been there. But, yeah, you know, deck's pretty cool. Very controlling. OTKs pretty consistently if given the opportunity, and the opponent has few to no defenses. So I think this was a pretty good showcase of everything the deck does. Cool? Cool. Bye-bye.